All right. All right. Thank you for joining us. Hello and welcome to today's program, Wildfire Ready, First Steps to Protect Your Home. My name is Lisa Versace, and I am the Programs and Engagement Manager here at the California Preservation Foundation. We are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization providing statewide leadership, advocacy, and education to ensure the protection of California's diverse cultural heritage and its historic places. Our work is made possible through the generous support of our members, donors, and sponsors, and we are particularly grateful to our education sponsor, Wisjani Elsner. Today, we are joined by Vincent Anderson, Fire Marshal for the City of Redlands. Vince is passionate about building collaboration between the fire service, allied professionals, and the public. With 12 years of experience, he now serves as the Fire Marshal for the City of Redlands in Southern California. Vince earned a master's degree in public administration from Liberty University and a BA in history with public affairs minor from UCLA. He's a certified fire marshal and a registered primary with California State Fire Marshal / State Fire Training. He's also an active voice in global public safety, sharing insights at conferences like the National Public Risk Management Association, NFPA, and even the International Association of Wildfire in Australia. If you have any questions for Vince during the program, please submit them using the Q&A box located at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll be saving all questions until the end of the program. As a reminder, in this program, we may not be able to address all your questions specific to historic properties. However, we will take these questions and use them to inform future programs and/or PDF or web resource. So please do ask away. Vince, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa, for that awesome introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Uh, we did a quick IT check, and I'll immediately start our screen share here as we jump into our program for today. I pressed all the right buttons. We should have our
Looks
full.
perfect.
Thank you very much. All right, so I am coming to our community here from Southern California. If you're not familiar with Redlands, we're just about an hour inland from Los Angeles. Our big neighbors are San Bernardino and Riverside. And so I'm super excited to talk about the wildfire conversation, the preparations, and with all this conversation, I really like to tread a fine line of, do we want the adrenaline to get going a little bit? Do we want to acknowledge this is one of our California, but be it our Mediterranean climate or even our forests? Is it one of those challenges that we grapple with? Absolutely, especially when we're working with our historic and our preservation sites. And even our communities throughout the state, yes to all of the above. But as we're walking that fine line with the adrenaline, I don't want us to feel helpless. I want us to really leave and say, okay, cool. There's something we can do, even if my structure is over 100 years old, with before any of these codes or safety and regulation came into play. That's really what I want our takeaway to be. So, quick little background on myself, where we're coming from in Redlands. And then we're going to dive into this presentation with the main approach being, what can we do now with common sense, really stretching that dollar as far as we can. And as I get to our real recommendations with this introduction presentation, you'll see with a little bit of muscle power and time, you can make your sites faster. Getting all my bullet points up here. So 12 years in the fire service now. I was updating the resume yesterday, and it goes quickly. But yes, product of the UC system. So go Bruins, and history major, public affairs minor. And really where I get to blend my passions here with from being able to having the humbling honor to wear the uniform and the academic background. I love building these bridges with all these different groups of public safety, fire department. It's more, it's not just, oh, that's what the fire station does. The big red engine shows up and saves the day. As much as that is part of our public safety delivery workflow, I'm really going to highlight as we go through this conversation how it's all of the links in the chain pulling together. And even before any of these bad days happen, we're in the business of trying to maintain normalcy. Establish, maintain, and restore normalcy as much as we can. When all else fails, sure, we've got especially our California Fire Service, our boots on the ground with the trucks, the engines, the aircraft. If you've seen any of these wildfire responses, everyone, and even coming from across state lines now. So all that to say, I kind of love being an ambassador for our little sector of the world. Quick disclaimer: credit to all the organizations for the different pictures we'll use. And with all this, I really want to act as an advocate and an awareness generator with all this. So wherever your jurisdiction is coming from. Sometimes the codes are a little more restrictive, a little different, county to county, city to city. I've really tried to format this that it's going to be applicable to everywhere, wherever you may be. So as always, check locally with your specific agencies, but a lot of this will be adaptable to wherever you may be. So quick little background on our Redlands team here. All right. So as always, I know they can't hear it, but I always say it. Thank you to my fire chief, my team here, and our city leaders. They really allow me to, kind of facilitate this passion of sharing all this, information. I always do thank them. But so 75,000 population for us, Redlands. We're getting close to being built out. We've still got a few green sites to fill in, but other than that, we'll be probably hovering 100,000 population. So not too big, not too small. And in that urban metro LA influence, 35 square miles, and most importantly, on our third bullet point here, that for today's conversation, a third of our city is in that wildland area. I'll talk on some of that terminology of what we identify it as, but from a simple perspective, when you start getting into those hillsides on the periphery and the perimeter of cities and towns, when you start really intermixing with that natural vegetation, that's kind of where you can be susceptible to these. Our big claim to fame with Redlands, if you're ever looking at a map and you look at the bottom right and you see the acronym ESRI, Environmental Science Research Institute, commonly known as ESRI, they are headquartered here just about 2 miles down from City Hall. So great partners from a local and a enterprise perspective, as well as University of Redlands, another great partner. So Redlands, we might not be the biggest city in California, but we do take pride in punching out of our weight class, as they say. With all of our public safety endeavors and really our fire department motto here, preserving the past and protecting the future. And I think that resonates a lot with our audience here today. We know we're not dealing with a completely blank slate. We know we're trying to maintain these cultural sites, these heritage, integral aspects of our communities that we want to maintain for generations from here, and be good stewards of all of that. So that's something from the fire department perspective we always look at of where we come from, what are we already doing well. Changes forever. Change will always be there, but what do we need to hold on to? What do we need to reinforce and solidify, instead of saying completely scrap it, start from square one. So that's really a guiding light for all of us. Individual experience for myself with our museums and our preservation sites at UCLA. Got to work with the Hammer and I Road Museum. My mistake, my typo still didn't get corrected. With City of Orange, we had special collections at our public library in Chapman University, their Hilbert Museum, and here in City of Redlands. If you're not familiar, we have the Lincoln Shrine. We just opened, it's still upcoming for the public opening, but Museum of Redlands, and plenty of our historic homes that are either historic homes that have been converted to business. But Redlands roots, we go back to the 1800s and the citrus industry. That's really what put Redlands on the map. And even if you're driving around town, we take pride in that. And even our badge here, we have the oranges that made Redlands a place to be. So that's a little background on where all we're coming from. All that to say, and not to make it be about Vince's show, I'm ecstatic everyone's here to tackle this conversation with us, because as you'll see, there's more you can do than you probably realize, and a lot of things that are going to be easy to obtain, not hugely cost prohibitive, and just with that awareness, it allows you to be familiar with that. So a quick presentation of what we'll be looking at. So being aware of where these wildfire zones are, how we can prepare for those wildfires, and then when we actually do have those, getting ready for those evacuation options if we do need to get out of the way and let our fire crews. With our first module here, diving into what are, so you'll hear the technical terminology are a fire hazard severity zone, and we'll look at that in the future slides here. I always like to put a positive spin on it and not something you'll see in any technical terminology, but wildfire protection areas. I always like to look at it, there's always something we can do. It's not this huge daunting challenge that there's nothing that can be done. It's overwhelming. So I like to always say, hey, it's a protection area. It's something we can engage with. Couple terms I'll throw at us so we can get familiar with what all this wildfire conversation and where these wildfire prone or protection areas may be. So we have this acronym, and our first one here, a WUI, pronounced a WUI, Wildland Urban Interface. And when we boil it down to its simplest form, where that urban development meets and intermixes with undeveloped areas. Picture we have off to the right here, this is more one of our wooded forest areas, a lot of trees, a lot of a little bit of higher elevation. This can be for our Southern California area where we start getting the rolling hills with the grass crops. So any type of vegetation, it can, it'll vary by what your topography is. But anywhere where you start, if you're developing something new or you're building into that natural area, that's really overall what that wildland urban interface is defined as. Taking us to our second main bullet point, what is a high or a fire hazard severity zone? This is a technical definition for California here, and as we start talking about where these areas are, how they're mapped, and what the background is to it, areas that based on their topography, geography, and fire history, and all that's plugged into a model and generates an area. If a fire were to happen, this could, there's enough vegetation, there's enough natural features, winds could carry the embers, there's enough natural fuel load that this could pose a challenge to the developed community. So that's the fire hazard severity zone. Where does this exist? Where does this happen? And next slides, we'll talk a little more. Backgrounds on it. The overall concept is established by government code here, and our colleagues at Cal Fire and State Fire Marshal, they're assigned to actually conduct the modeling, assign the zones, and they're kind of like the stewards of that legislative charge there. As we start contextualizing where these areas are, we look at also where they are and the types of wildfires simultaneously, because as much as each fire is a fire, they all do have some unique characteristics. So be it if you have trees, if you have grass crop, if you have anything in between, three main classes. So first one is our surface fires, and think of that is the fire that's going to be eating up the grasses, the bushes, the shrubs along the ground. Those fires, they can still, especially the lighter fuels, the grasses, the weeds, those burn. They don't tend to burn very hot, but they tend to burn very fast. It's think of it just like a thin piece of paper. If you take a match to it, it's going to spark pretty quickly, as opposed to if you take a match to a thicker log for a campfire, it's going to take a little longer. So those surface fires typically very burn very quick, but don't burn as hot. With the ground fire, very similar as well. That's when our bushes start getting a little bigger and start really connecting to that tree process here. And kind of the picture off to the right brings us to our third one here with the crown fires. Our crown fires are when they fires get into the different tree biomes, and with our crown fires and the tree fires, those tend to be our biggest concern, because when those trees start going, they have a lot of inherent energy. When just think of it like a big campfire, they're also elevated. So as much as you get that direct heat transmitting from tree to tree that starts taking that fire through the tree forest, since they're elevated, it's that much higher as the winds pick up those embers from the different parts of the tree that are burning, that then start sending those downwind for a couple miles there. So with all of our wildfire protection features, our mitigations, we're looking at how do we limit the fuel or break it up. With our we're on Earth, we're going back to the third grade fire triangle. We're on Earth, we really can't take the air away of it. So taking the air and the oxygen out of it, not really too much of an option when a real wildfire gets going. Can we have a water? Yes, we can, with our airdrops between the helicopters, the aircraft, and our engines that get deployed. But even then, sometimes the fire's burning so hot, the water absorption ability from what the fire is, we couldn't have enough water sometimes. So that brings us to all of our mitigations, whether it's any types of these three fires. We're trying to take the fuel out of it. When we take any side of that fire triangle, once we take that away, fire goes out. Taking one step back to our fire hazard severity zones here. So originally they were released in 2007, and they had been mapped out. They were based on an overall parcel, the parcel level, and they were assigned either a high, a very high, or a moderate rating. It hadn't been until 2004 that the state responsibility areas were updated. Now, 2005 this year was our local responsibility areas. A quick overview on that. In this next page, I'm going to show you how to get to the viewers to see where your specific sites are. That'll show both of them. State responsibility areas, these are the really more truly rural areas that state and CAL FIRE are directly responsible for. So if you have a CAL FIRE fire station nearby, wherever your site is, you're likely going to be in a state responsibility area. It's a technical term in the sense of who's responsible for financing the fire prevention aspects, the firefighting response aspects of it. Think state responsibility, a little more rural. Their maps were rolled out in 2004, just 2005 this year, and kind of following our large Los Angeles fires that we had, and Los Angeles and Altadena there. 2005, the state started the rollout for the incorporated cities throughout California. So it started in the north, central, the coast, and then Southern California. As of March 2024, all 4 phases have been released. So that local responsibility area, that's where you start seeing your incorporated cities, towns, and counties that we got these maps. Little background and education opportunity from these are all generated from the state at the local and the city level. We're not really consulted too much. We don't really get a say of where they are, where they aren't. The only option we have is to actually expand them. So the state basically gives us the mandate of, hey, local cities, here's your map. You need to use it as your part of your development process. You don't have the option to say you don't want to. So if all the maps have been released, all the jurisdictions are kind of in the ordinance adoption process right now. My second point, and kind of just for education, if you have an existing building, this doesn't change too much. Where these maps mostly apply for is if I had a vacant lot and I was building a new building. If my lot wasn't previously in one of the zones and now was added, I have to add the exterior wildfire protection features when I'm building it brand new. So right now there's no retroactive requirements for structures to upgrade roofs, anything like that. As long as you're continuing your normal landscaping, that's about it. If you were building new in these areas that were newly expanded, that would apply. But for all of our existing structures, as I take us into module 3 here, we just kind of maintain our normal property maintenance that we've been doing, and that's where we're putting our best foot forward. Map off to the right here, this is our one from Redlands. As you're navigating these maps, and I'll highlight for you, red is the very high, orange is the high, and yellow is the moderate. With all of those, the best way to approach it and lens to look through, the closer you are to these undeveloped areas, the more likely you are to be in a very high. And as the area gets closer to the developed parts of town, that ember cast and how far the winds could, hypothetically carry the embers in a broadcasting approach, that's where you'll start seeing that drop off. Now, I've got a QR code for you here, and I will be happy to get this to Preservation Foundation for the actual link here. But this link will take you to the combined statewide viewer. So if you're in that state responsibility area, if you're in an incorporated city with the local responsibility area, this will take you to the most current app that has both of those on there. Top left, when you go to the viewer, you can punch in an individual address, and it'll show you where that property falls in the site there. I'll highlight there are still a few maps out there that will show only the state responsibility area or only the local responsibility area, and that's something we've been working with our stakeholders here. I've had community members reach out and say, Vince, I'm not on the map. This doesn't apply to me. And I've had to be a little bit of a heartbreaker and say, actually, that's only the state responsibility area. We have another map for incorporated cities. But so those other viewers that have the individual layers specifically still exist out there publicly, but this combined map here is the best one we're referring all of our stakeholders to. All right, talked about WUI, we've talked about these areas, we've talked about our maps. Now we're going to get into really the easy, I don't want to say easy, the readily attainable options to keep our existing structures safe is going to be our approach. As all of our preparations, we even start early before the wildfire is even an option. And having preparing for that adrenaline before you have the adrenaline, those emergency scenarios. That's really what we always, promote and try and educate all of our community members on. So we're going to talk a little on emergency alerts, kind of the early detection opportunities, and then that property protection that'll really be designed for all of our audience here. So the emergency alerts with all of the wildfires, the name of the game is knowing about it as soon as possible. Now, something we have, this is another resource we can share with a follow-up, the Alert California Wildfire Detection Network. So this process, it had been a UC San Diego sponsored project for about 3 years, just about 2 years ago. After a lot of like beta testing and seeing these different aspects, here's a screenshot to the top right here. We have these cameras across the state, whether it's a Caltrans camera, whether it's a UC San Diego Alert California directly unit. They are constantly looking for any of these smoke clouds or even like a direct fire start area. And it works just like a Ring doorbell. Your local fire department gets this notification and it says, hey, we've detected, and it's called an anomaly. Runs all the AI layers, says, human, I think that you might want to take a look at this. From Redlands, we had an absolute success story just this week. So we were able to work with the network to add a camera for one of our canyon areas. The camera alerted all of us on our phones over here. And we said, oh, yep, absolutely. That is a smoke cloud coming out of the canyon. We had resources going 5 minutes before the first 911 call said, hey, I see smoke coming from the canyon. So this is one of our really emerging technology. There's been success stories out of Orange County, but the biggest aspect, as soon as we know about these fires, we can start getting the resources going there, which sooner we know about it, sooner we can start responding to it. The smaller we can keep that fire, everyone's safer for it. So that's one of our real assets as the California community here. Takes me to my second point of let's say we do get a fire event going, being signed up for those emergency and those evacuation alerts through your community. Each community tends to have a different one that will be operated. Think of it as a baseline, though. We'll get on our phones an amber alert or a silver alert. That same technology is being rolled out to all of the cities. So we're able now to draw a box and say, all right, this area, we need to be, get the evacuation alerts. Here's what that short code text is going to be. As much as that technology is evolving for us as like local public safety, I still encourage everyone for that redundancy, get signed up for, hey, I want emergency alerts for City of Redlands, for City of San Bernardino. The technology is coming a long way that a lot of the systems are talking back and forth. And even if you're in one of those areas that gets like the evacuation box drawn on it by the incident commanders there, it's still helpful to just have that extra peace of mind that you're signed up. I expand that out to if you have any family members or anyone that loved ones and cared ones that might have mobility issues that they might need help evacuating on themselves, signing up for that community if you're going to be part of that solution and part of their evacuation themselves. The earlier you know, the better you can be prepared. And really lastly, when knowing multiple, if you are self-evacuating, knowing multiple ways out of if one way is blocked, taking a drive around the neighborhood, especially I'll use our Redlands community, for our ongoing examples. A lot of our streets like connect that people might not know about, or it might be a way out that Google might not know about, that even these streets connect. When you got a few extra minutes on a weekend, take a drive. Have the family take a drive of, all right, if this first way is blocked, we know another way. If the fire's happening on this side, we could go this way. Knowing that background knowledge, being familiar with all your strengths and resources there, it's going to serve you well if the bad day ever does happen. Now, what we have all been waiting for. So how to actually keep our structures safer from these wildfires if the events do happen. I put a lot of brain power to this. My UCLA undergrad one I always like to come up with a moniker of how we approach this, but really good looking was the best I could come up with. So R, we're going to talk about the roof. G, we're going to talk about the gutters, and L, we're going to talk about landscaping. So one thing I'll say with all this, you'll see plenty of these infographics, kind of like the example I have here of what you can do to retrofit a home, what you can do if money and resources aren't an option. Here's everything you can do. that is it's a great resource if you have access to them. But we really wanted to approach this presentation of what's the most common sense people can take if they have extra time on the weekend. If they're working with their site and we have volunteer groups that want to help out, what's easy actionable items we can give them. So that's where we're going to be taking our presentation today. So for our roofs, number one, the biggest bullet point I have for us is repairing and replacing any of those missing tiles. If you're having roof leaks, that's kind of a big indicator that you might want to be looking at the roof. So if water's getting through, we don't want those embers getting through as well. And this kind of goes back to we're trying to get that fire to run out of fuel before it starts impacting our structure. So when those embers are coming from miles away, when they're landing, we just want them to run out of fuel. We don't want them to get to the bottom side of the roof, any of those holes. And even the asphalt shingles here that I have for these examples, these still have a pretty considerable amount of fire resistance from those embers. They might smolder a little bit, but there's typically not enough fuel behind it to take off. Now, with the top example here, if the embers start landing on the underside, the sheathing of the roof, they start getting to the backside of the shingles there, and it can be a little bit of a different story. And that's when we start seeing those homes that are lost, miles away from the fire front there. Second one point, with a good old leaf blower or broom, clearing off any of the leaf accumulation, especially in the fall after we get those deciduous trees that are going through the standard season process. Clearing those out and then as we get again to spring, going into the back end of spring, and we start heating up for our California summers, just making sure that it's clear. And this is all based on, again, we don't want to give that ember that's coming from miles away any fuel any more than it's going to inherently have. So making sure our roof's repaired and making sure the roof is cleared, you'll be safer for it. Now takes me to our G for our gutters. Same process, very similar to the roof of inherently those gutters they're there for water to make sure it comes out the spout where we want it to, but same process, making sure those are clear. And again, this will look pretty much identical to the roof process, but any of that leaf accumulation, if it can be roof, our pine needles, our leaves, anything like that, any of that dead vegetation, making sure it makes its way off the roof, out of the gutters, and into the green waste or the solid waste there. This is proven time and time again that when the ember doesn't have anything to land on, any of those light flashy fuels, the roof tends to hold its strength for that full duration there. But with a leaf blower or broom and a little bit of muscle power and time, your roof, we don't give that ember that landing pad to take them. All right, going to take me to our landscaping. Now, one thing I'll highlight here, and I actually specifically use this infographic here, you'll see with a lot of the public education opportunities, the different zones of our, for your vegetation management, your landscaping. Zone 2, we'll see typically from 100 feet from the property to 30 feet in. Zone 1 from 30 feet to 5 feet in, and Zone 0 is a new one that's merging with our current technology and research. 5 feet from the structure all the way in. Now, here's where I like to highlight these infographics are great when we have our really rural and spread out parts of town. I was just at one of our Firewise community meetings last night here in Redlands. If we were to look 100 feet past a structure, we would be into three houses down the street. So these infographics are great, but I like to really simplify it, and where I'll talk on it takes all those links of our chain pulling together. Like I said, all of our neighbors pulling together. If you have those more of the tract developments that are in these zones, it becomes, everyone's responsible for their own yard and their own site. But as we start really looking at more of the perimeter, hey, where's those true buffer zones of where the development actually goes to? So I just like to highlight that as great as these infographics are, a lot of our developed communities, these setbacks of having 100 feet from each structure and each property line, they don't exist. And not to say at all that these are retroactive in the sense that we're going to, completely bulldoze all of our communities and build them all 100 feet away. So with all that said, it takes me to my main talking points for our landscaping here. Number one, making sure that grass and that ground cover is at 4-inch growth or less. And either through lawnmowers, it can be the push ones, it can be the ride-on ones, it can be someone with a weed whacker. 4 to 6 inches is typically that maximum growth you want to see that keeps those light flashy fuels down at a manageable level. When we start looking at our trees, 6 feet separation from the ground and any of the adjacent trees as well. Where this becomes really important for the trees and the tree canopies is if you have a fire that's slowly working its way across the ground, even let's say you've maintained that grass and ground cover at 4 inches, we want to prevent every opportunity we have from it getting up into the tree branches or any part of the tree canopy and then becoming that jump off point that those embers start getting carried further down. So we'll see 6 feet separation from the ground and then 10 feet separation from not the room, but the roof itself. That same aspect of we want to limit any of that direct heat transmission as well as any of those close ember transmissions to the structure there. But with all that said, really that landscaping of I have a saying, I should probably coin this at some point, but if it's green, it's good. If it's brown, it's got to go bye-bye. And as we start getting into our later spring and early summer here, now is really the time to be focusing on that landscaping for that sense of landscapers. If you're outsourcing it at all, you're starting to get a little backlog with those times and being careful as well. We have had wildfires that have occurred like while people are doing these mitigations in the dry fuel. So really timing is a big priority. Best to do it while it's still green. We still have a lot of relative humidity. So if you're looking for those volunteers to be helping you out in the next month or so, it's a great time. Second QR code I have for you. This will take you to CAL FIRE's Ready for Wildfire site, and this has a lot of that information. A lot more of the infographics, some of the advanced, those retrofit options that if you're really looking at being more ready for that wildfire protection, you've got some resources that you can take some capital investments on. But this will take you to our colleagues there, and from the information is pretty much consistent as far as preparedness statewide. When we get into some of those codes and different separations, that's kind of where it's best always checking with your agency. Hey, what applies to my site? What I've heard these requirements are out there. Do we have anything more restrictive locally for our jurisdiction here? And this will take us into our closing here, and then we'll be happy to take any questions. All right, so with all that said, we need your help. I'm going to say we, as the fire service, as the public sector, we do not have enough fire engines, enough resources to do it on our own. As you know, fires have changed. They're getting longer. They're getting hotter. With all these mitigations, we all hope it's something that's never needed. But if it is that the payoff is astronomical, and it's worth its weight in platinum. So. Number one, being aware of those wildfire protection areas, that fire hazard severity zone, knowing if this is a risk that applies to you and in your community and your stakeholders. Sometimes these areas can be closer than you think, and that just having that awareness, taking the mitigation seriously, signing up for those alerts, and it can have a huge payoff for you. And then number three, continuing to prioritize that structure and landscape maintenance. By cleaning out the roof, by cleaning out the gutters, and by keeping that landscape. One, it's going to be aesthetically pleasing, but two, now it's going to be fire safe at the same time. Keep on doing what you're doing because it's invaluable. From the fire department side, when wildfire is happening and a crew comes across a property that is well maintained, it has this defensible space, the landscape is protected. Speaking very candidly, it can be the difference on how long that crew will stay there to protect the home. If they know behind them, the landscaping is all maintained, they still have a way out if it does get too hot. They will stay there longer to defend the home as opposed to, okay, behind us hasn't been maintained. We're now looking at additional spot fires behind us. We don't want to get locked in here. So with all that, I'll continue to maintain it. Now, with that, this QR code here, QR code to my LinkedIn. Like I said, I love connecting with colleagues from all of our different industries. So please feel free to connect there. And with that, thank you very much for your time. With all of our whatever business card we have and wherever we are in the org chart, it takes a village, and be happy to connect with anyone and keep the questions going. Cool. With that,
Awesome.
are we ready for any questions?
We are. Thank you so much, Vince. That was hugely helpful. We have a bunch of questions from the audience, and I have some of my own questions as well. I might pepper in there. But I will start with the audience questions. Gail asks how one would register their cell phone with reverse 911.
Cool. So reverse 911. Let's play this real world by where, Gail, if you wouldn't mind chiming in what community you're from. Typically, it just the baseline, the best way to find it. Whatever city or even the county you're in, a simple Google search of I'll use our example here. San Bernardino County emergency alerts, City of Redlands emergency alerts. Starting with any search engine, Bing, Google, anything like that, that tends to be the best direct one to say, hey, I'd like to go one more step for that redundancy to make sure my cell phone here is signed up for the alerts. The reverse 911s, and that newer technology I was alluding to, we're having the ability to be able to draw those boxes of, hey, everyone with a mobile device in this area, we want one to get one of those alerts. It's getting there, but as the one of those simple alerts, hey, I live in Redlands emergency alerts. Typically, one of those first two links is going to get you the registration pages.
I believe also, depending on who your provider is, you can register directly. You can at least register your home address with your cell phone provider. And then I know that there's a number of apps. For example, the American Red Cross does an app where you can get a earthquake alert based on your current, or an earthquake alert or other alerts based on your current location that I know I use when I'm traveling. So hopefully that helps you out, Gail. Um, sorry, going back to questions a little bit. Allison asks, can we see the earlier diagram with the house again? I think the one with the not the one with the property layouts, but the very first one that you did with your wonderful acronym. I'm not sure, Allison, I apologize. I don't know which images you're wanting to see there, but I'm happy to have Vince leave that on the screen as we go through questions. And please do let me know. Okay, good. That is the one you wanted to see. Perfect.
And just to expand on this one as well, that link to Cal Fire's Ready for Wildfire. What's been very refreshing, kind of in really the past 2 years, like all these infographics from Cal Fire, National Fire Protection Association. I could list on for a few minutes here. Everyone's information is really becoming cohesive. So again, they might use a different house layout, they might use a different color palette, but even just off this example, all of the window recommendations, the roofs, the decks, that information is all becoming concurrent. So kind of just becomes at this point, which house do you think is the prettiest, and use that as your infographic.
I like it. Margaret asks, when replacing old gutters with new gutters, I think I know the answer to this. Should the new gutters be made from plastic or metal?
Metal is the best. And think of it going back to if you've got clean gutters, as we talked about, if the ember lands in the plastic gutters, generally those aren't going to catch fire. It becomes as that ground fire or that ground cover fire is like directly radiating heat, that's when the plastic can start melting. So as a baseline, plastic still works, but the best option in your toolbox is going to be those non-combustible ones of metal.
Perfect. Thank you. Kevin asks, in the wake of the Eaton fire, owners of historic homes in Pasadena have been asking to replace wood sliding/shrink shingles on exterior walls, single pane wood framed windows. How crucial are these features in addition to the RGF elements you discussed, or sorry, RGL?
Yeah, awesome. It's catching on. There in every step forward is a benefit. Where I'm very conscious, and especially as we deal with the historic homes of and this is something Lisa and I are working on for like a potential like module number 2 for this of when you have one of these historic structures, how do you balance all these priorities of fire safety and resiliency versus that historic nature and historic spirit of the house itself. So all are valuable. The It's really kind of that platinum level. If you have the resources to make the retrofits, it sure doesn't hurt. The one I always like to highlight, and even with like the exterior wood siding and decking and all that, there are aftermarket applications you can do on exterior wood. As with always, start with they can increase its like fire resistance. So let's fully replacing a wood siding house. Sure, that's going to come with a decent price tag. Um, and a retrofit process. But something that I think is often overlooked is there are exterior aftermarket wood treatments, and I use it's not it's applied similar to like a lacquer. You put it on, it dries. Most of the time, it dries pretty clear. The market is very much maturing with the technology there. But one full replacement, great, probably the best you could do. But a lot of these like just incremental. All right, I still like the siding. I want it to have the nature of the original structure here. Being able to retrofit it a little bit and improve it. So all of that to say, yeah, when you can make the retrofits and make that capital investment, sure, putting the best foot forward there. But not to say there's a lot of these incremental improvements along the way that can stretch the budget as well.
Thank you. Sorry, making note of the questions here. I want to make sure, as I mentioned at the top of the program, and as Vince just mentioned too, this is really part one of a multi-part series. This program is really intended to give you some basic foundations on actionable steps. And what we're really looking to from the audience here, in addition to our own knowledge sources, is to get a sense of what questions you really need answered. So questions like this are incredibly helpful for helping us develop both that next program as well as some sort of PDF or web resource that we'll be sharing out in the next month or two, most likely. So I'm just making note of this question before I forget. This is going to be a similar, your previous answer, Vince, is going to run into this one. Anonymous asks, can you talk about fire resistant building materials that are compatible with historic properties? I would say, can you just talk about fire resistant building materials? What's compatible, and I would say one with the caveat that what's compatible with historic properties is going to depend on the property. Adobe is not going to be compatible with a Craftsman. Wood siding is not going to be compatible with a mid-century modern building. So I think if you could just talk to us a little bit about some common fire-resistant building materials, and again, with kind of the asterisk that we'll be getting more into which of these are going to be helpful to you and specific property types in the future.
Let's start highest level of like in non-combustibility, and then we'll work to kind of more options that are a little like hiding in plain sight, if you will. So you mentioned the adobes, the masonry, any of those bricks, anything that, I mean, the material itself can't burn, that's absolutely invaluable in itself. If you could expose as much heat to it want, those materials are when it can't burn, it's one less risk to worry about. When especially the sidings and the structure itself. When I start looking at the roof, we start looking at like the adobe tiles, being the best when we get into one caveat. I'll say even with the adobe tiles, still important to make sure you're doing that roof cleaning and blowing any of those leaves out, because as the tiles come together, there is some inherent like attic and roof ventilation that's built into the construction of the roof. You want to make sure it is, as your roof can breathe, it's not accumulating any of those leaves along the way. But the asphalt tiles, even with the fiberglass infusions, that's kind of becoming most of our standard roofs. They even have a pretty considerable intrinsic fire resistant ember still land, but generally not going to take off when we start really looking at, and our more our wood cabins, those craftsmen, those wood shake shingle roofs, that's when we those tend to be the hardest of uh, as old as typically the wood shake shingle roofs are. Wood, basic wood without being treated. Yep, it's firewood. So those can kind of be your least protection there. Last one I would kind of wrap this into is the vents. So any of like the openings that you have, I kind of go back to again keeping it as streamlined as possible. Any of those embers, we just don't want it. We want it to it if it's going to hit the house, we want it to run out of fuel. So with the siding, great. If we can treat it, or if it can be a non-combustible siding in the structure, even better. Roof, same process. With our vents, there's plenty of on-market and aftermarket available ones that you can actually retrofit. Yeah, I've got my dormer vents. I've got my vent part of the attic that you can replace that in its simplest form. It has a metal mesh that same thing. It stop that ember hits it and knocks down, doesn't go anywhere. Can't get to the inside and then start the fire from the inside. And now we're having a bad day at that point. You'd probably go on for the non-combustible ones. Oh, the one I was going to mention, hiding in plain sight. Wood itself, like I said, we have some of those aftermarket treatments that can be done. But even if you're seeing one of these new construction homes that's built to modern day building codes, from the factory, they can actually treat the wood that it has. I want to say it's like typically a 50-year lifespan of fire resistance itself. It's a high pressure treatment. It's more it really gets infused into the wood. So if you're seeing a new home built nowadays that's in one of the identified areas, there is still wood that is we get that aesthetic feel, we get that that nature-esque aspect, and it is fire resistant. So the technology is marching along to meet all these demands.
Perfect. Thank you. Greg asks, any perspective on managing fuel in forested hills near structures? I've been told there's several options for fuel management, parentheses, goats, limbing trees, hand crews, etc. My preference is goats, just for the record. But what's the most important to the fire crew for fuel management in wooded hills?
All the above. I'm gonna throw Redlands here in the spotlight, and I'll speak from our kind of local public perspective. Very realistic, and you can kind of tell from the presentation, I like to stretch that public dollar in the budget as much as possible and bring as much common sense as we can. For Redlands, where we've had our most success, is all the above. I always like to go with the approach, you never get what you don't ask for. We've had a lot of success. So California Conservation Corps, and anyone that has a public site, I would highlight with them. We were able to really partner with them last year to help a lot with they tend to not be able to help with private property, but any easements along roadways. If you're a public site, they've got their fuels crews, their forest crews, and they can help you out into helping in that process. And I know professionally, it was a pretty cool project. A lot of their members are on the front end of their careers, and they're contributing to community safety. So California Conservation Corps, I'd highlight them. Continuing on more the human muscle power side of things, a lot of the nonprofits, we actually, one of my colleagues is at today and starting tomorrow, Team Rubicon. If you're familiar with them, the best elevator pitch I've had is they're like Red Cross, but with a little more veteran and DoD volunteers, primarily responding to after disasters to help the recovery aspect, but they're starting up a disaster mitigation process. And again, kind of just by asking and saying, hey, we'd like help, they're going to be helping us out with some of those tree management processes. And goats, don't forget about goats, sheep. What I love about those is we have to be very conscious, especially as we get to like the fuels drying out. Tools can start those wildfires with friction and sparks. Goats don't start too many fires through anything. They can also get to a lot of like the steeper areas, just because inherently that's what we've done for eons. So each one comes with different benefits there. But all that to say, everything helps. You never get what you don't ask for, and we've been, especially now with the current events, Eaton and Palisades fire. Everyone wants to help, and kind of the way I look at it is, you don't get anything you don't ask for, and when you ask nicely, who doesn't want to make the community more fire safe, especially with our preservation sites? Who doesn't want to just want to keep this around for, generations of Californians. It's a pretty hard thing to say no to.
That was actually one of the follow-up questions that I had for you. You were talking about volunteer organizations that might be available to help. Is there any sort of centralized database for that you know about, or something through CAL FIRE, or is it kind of Google your own community or see what your local fire department or city or county website might offer?
I would say yes, but let me, and I'll through our chat here. I believe it's California uh, Fire Safe Council. I believe in the past 2 weeks have like published out a vendor list. Now I think it's more a little more, hey, these are available at at a cost, but these have been vetted. Like these vendors are familiar with all the requirements of doing these safe. Let me see if I can bring that up while we take questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. A couple of questions. I'm going to throw two together here from Margaret and another participant. They ask any references for preparing the house as you're, or for any recommendations for preparing the house as you're evacuating, i.e. removing curtains from windows, interior doors to be left open, etc. And the second part of that asks, many houses have screen vents under the house. Should a cover be placed over a screen vent before evacuating in a fire? And obviously, I would, again, a little asterisk before Vince's response. This is, of course, if you have time. If you don't have time, go.
Uh, Yes, completely agree with that, Lisa. So yes to all the above. And we always think of, again, that heat. We're trying to give that heat no additional passive like of conductivity, or between radiant heat and conductive heat and all that. We can get chemistry another day, but we're trying to take that heat away. So absolutely, if you have time, any of those window coverings and those curtains, getting those away. So even though the fire, that window is going to be getting hot, I wouldn't, wouldn't want to be touching it, but if that can't heat up the curtain on the other side, absolutely. If you got time, works great. I'll be honest, first time I've heard of leaving doors open. My first inclination would be closing doors. So if a ember were to get in, it would kind of confine it to like that original room if possible. That's more like kind of like from the structure firefighting side. But I'm learning something every day. And the one of the any of those vents, correct. Like if you have time to cover those vents, same thing. You're preventing as much as possible any of those embers and any of those heat transmission channels to go anywhere. So yeah, if you have time to cover with non-combustible, even if it's as silly as it may sound, like food grade tin foil, that's one more layer of protection you can have. And I would highlight again a lot of these aftermarket ones. There's flame and fire resistant like foam you can spray on the house. You can basically put on the garden hose, but you can talk products for days that are out there. So with time, all the above. Yep. And the more I'd go back to and kind of relating it back to our talking points, the more prepared you are, the more time you have before and when the adrenaline starts. Little Benjamin Franklin. What's the ounce of prevention for a pound of response?
Perfect. Thank you. Nancy asks, are there any plants that you suggest that may be somewhat fire resistant?
Question. In the yes, I will be happy to share. I'm going to put our Redlands in the highlight here. There's actually, so let me get a little bit of background on this. Since we have so many biomes in California, our NorCal, our SoCal, Central, and everyone in between, it's a little specific. So what might be natural to one plant species natural to one area might be invasive somewhere else. So with that said, a huge resource can be the UC Agriculture Resource Group. They actually have kind of regionally gone through and said, hey, these are fire resistant plants for this area. And let me see if I can get their list overall before. But generally they're at the county level. San Bernardino, believe it or not, is like one county that doesn't have a lot of times I have to steal from Riverside. But the UC Master Gardeners list, they have a lot of good resources. I'll throw two links in here for those fire resistant plants. I'll do our one here for Redlands that's based on, so my colleagues from Orange County Fire Authority, they have a great research ring. Los Angeles County has their own. You'll see most of these species be pretty consistent in public sector. We love to beg, borrow, and steal from each other and adapt. So if the format format might look a little different, but the content's going to be the same. Yeah, there's a reason for it. And let me see if I can get the UC agriculture group.
Thank you. And also as a reminder to our audience, I will send around an email following this program that has all of these links that Vince has been providing in the chat for us. So we've got a couple minutes left. I'm just trying to look through my questions and see if there's anything that I wanted to ask you in particular. Oh, I've got one that just jumped into the Q&A. Donald asked, would you recommend changing external and internal vents to intumescent vents? Are there risks in doing this?
Okay, the intumescent vents. No, I've actually seen these. It was up in Woodside, if anyone up there. So the intumescent vents, they from what I've heard and seen, they work pretty well. So for our audience here, works just like a normal vent and looks pretty normal. When it gets exposed to heat, it has a built-in like intumescent layer that's like of foam that starts expanding. So normally you're getting that airflow, you're getting that ventilation. When it gets that heat or that fire exposure, that intumescent foam is the best way I can describe it, starts reacting and starts expanding and seals itself off. So they are, and most of these technologies, they're all listed by UL, just like light bulbs and all of our electrical and extension cords we have. So they go through a testing process to make sure it's up to market standards. Also, Cal Fire and State Fire Marshal, they have a California listing process. So if you're seeing something especially listed for sale in California, unless someone's really skirting the rules, they've gone through all those that consumer protection process to, hey, is this actually worth its weight? So yes, those intumescent vents, the one trade-off with them, and this is probably the least amount of concern, they are kind of like a one and done. So wildfire comes through, all the vents activate and they seal off. Just have to replace them after because they don't reset themselves. No, it's one of those cooler technologies I've seen out there.
That's awesome. And I'm sure that, with everything going on, we will be seeing more and more of those across the state. Well, a huge thank you to Vince for your time today, as has been incredibly enlightening. I know that I have learned a lot, and I'm sure that our audience has learned a lot as well. I do hope that everyone enjoyed this program and that you're walking away with actionable information. If you've not filled out our questionnaire related to this program, and as we mentioned, the future programs and materials we will be developing, I ask that you please do so. I've also just dropped the link to it in the chat, and we'll be sending it again with the follow-up email to this program. I also hope to see you all at a future program. Next week, we have one on maintaining and upgrading your historic home, part 3 of our Homeowners Guide to Historic Houses. We also have our annual preservation conference coming up just 2 weeks away somehow at this late date of April. That starts on May 6th. You can check out information about our conference and all of our upcoming programs at californiapreservation.org. While you're there, please consider supporting CPF with a donation or becoming a member if you are not already a part of our preservation community. Again, a huge thank you to Vince for your time today and sharing all of your knowledge. And we hope to see everyone at a program again soon. Bye-bye.